Good morning. I'd like to call to order the December 20th, 2023 UCIDA, UCCRC meetings. Can we all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll have a roll call. Michael Ham, present. Lynn Archer.
Here.
Dr. Diane Enyon.
Here.
Stephen Kelly.
Here.
Rashida Tyler is running late. Okay. Rachel Silverman.
Here.
And Costiwell.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. The mission statement. So the mission statement of the Ulster County Industrial Development Agency is to advance the job opportunities, general prosperity, and long-term economic vitality of the Ulster County residents by targeting tax incentives, bonding, and other assistance to foster creation and attraction of new business and the retention and expansion of existing businesses. You all have in front of you the minutes from November 15th, 2023. If you could review them, and I will accept a motion to approve.
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Public comment. Agenda items only. Rick Jones.
You mind if I stand here?
Mike, I have copies of. I have The
camera is behind you.
Oh, okay. I have copies. Can I give them out?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Sure, you want to pass those down? I think there's enough.
Come down here. See you perfect. Oh my goodness. Which side should I turn? Right side or left side? Right to the camera.
Do you need one for records on your end? Did anyone?
Good morning, Chair. Thank you for letting me speak. Good morning, Board. I have a couple of comments with regard to an item that you're going to be talking about today, which is lifting the moratorium that you've had on the housing policy for the last 2 years. I have written here that it'll only take me 5 to 7 minutes, but it could take a little bit longer. So I apologize up front. I generally very strongly support you lifting the moratorium on the housing policy. However, having said that, I'm a little bit disappointed that the policy that you're going to be lifting, that's recorded in the documentation, is the same policy that was in place 2 years ago, and you were unable to make any changes to it, which I think is very necessary as the IDA goes forward. Having said that, there are a couple of facts that I want to cover first, just to set things up, and then a couple of suggestions that I have with regards to a possible policy that you might want to consider. In fact, I drafted something that I could share with you if you wish it, a policy that takes into account what I call affordable housing, which I think you have been deeply in discussions about over the last couple of months at least. So facts first. The old policy already includes permission to do affordable housing. However, it doesn't define exactly what that means. It also talks about workplace housing. So the latter, workplace housing, you can do right now, which is that housing that is done on behalf of a corporation that gets an inducement. It's housing for their employees. So you can already do that. It's the affordable housing that undoubtedly you're grappling with. The workplace housing, I defined already. Affordable, at least this board, and you all know that I was on the board at one time, and I miss it, but I don't miss it. Affordable has always been described and talked about with this board in terms of rentals that are based on some percentage of the AMI, adjusted median income, as defined by HUD, which is the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The old IDA, prior to the moratorium, spoke in terms of affordable housing or affordable projects, providing anywhere from at least 20% or higher of affordable units. It never spoke about individual ownership units, or what I would call retail units, like houses or townhouses or condominiums. It was always rentals, and it was always some percentage of the AMI. The old board approved, just as an example and a fact, the old board actually approved the Kingstonian based upon affordable housing of 10%. Unfortunately, we had to be satisfied with what we got, the 10%. The board actually wanted more, and at one time, a fact, City of Kingston had a requirement that 20% of new units, of new builds, had to be affordable housing. They changed that on behest of the Kingstonian project. The Kingstonian didn't feel that it could make enough return, and so they asked for 10%. So fine, 10%, half a loaf is better than no loaf whatsoever. And that was the reason why, one of the reasons why that was decided, and it was notable that it did contain affordable housing. Not enough, but it did contain some. So there are many, many other facts and a lot of history, but I have some suggestions. The first one is don't pass the resolution. I like it, but don't pass the resolution contained in the documentation today to lift the moratorium until you make some substantial and agreed upon changes to the policy that you can then say, we're lifting the moratorium, and oh, by the way, we now have something that we can apply to the community at large. You need to define what kind of housing you want to do, and I believe affordable and some percentage of AMI is extremely appropriate. And why not vote on it? Because you're implementing something that the old board already had in place, and that wasn't good enough. I don't feel that what you have in place or would be put in place would cut it, and I fear that you'll rush blindly into approving retail housing without an affordable component. There's a crying need for affordable housing. I'm stating the obvious. For firemen, policemen, union workers, school teachers, startup families, and the like. They would not be able to afford, for the most part, retail housing as might be being thought by this board that you want to do. Retail housing being single-family homes, townhouses, or condominiums. The notion, which perhaps you've kicked around, that all boats might rise no matter what kind of housing you do, that this board might do, in my mind is just pure poppycock. What will happen will be continued gentrification and enormous frustration among the voters who are the ones who really make this county work. So I believe if the IDA is going to get involved in affordable housing, it needs to be only with affordable housing. And at that 20% or more of the housing being affordable. And I don't support retail housing, make it clear, of any sort being the focus of the IDA, whether they are condominiums, townhouses, or single-family homes. I've also read in one of the comments that was made, or maybe it was listening to some of the discussions that the governance board did have back in November, I believe it was, of this entity. And there was a discussion about the Marlborough project, which had been before this board many years ago. And the Marlborough is a perfect example of a project that the board should not have supported. They wanted us to support their housing. They could not come up with a viable economic model that would allow for any affordable housing. We asked for 20, maybe we would have been satisfied with 10, but they came up with none. They claimed that they could not make the project work. Well, the reason for it is that the property was too expensive. There was extensive blasting that had to be done. And so all we were doing, if we did the project, would be to support perhaps their decision at selecting that piece of property. And oh, by the way, it got built. So why did they really need the IDA? The IDA would have been appropriate had they been able to come up with a significant amount of affordable housing, and perhaps we would have done it. Didn't happen. It's a bad example of anything the IDA should be looking at, that project or any other project. My last comment is I don't think that this board should be doing projects and using the IDA's nickel to support projects that don't have affordable housing attached to it. So I'm glad to see that you're lifting the moratorium, but I'm disappointed to see that it's the same one that was in place before, and perhaps as a way of putting a fire under yourselves, don't pass this until you have some changes made. Now, before I left the board, in both April of I believe it was 21, and again earlier this year in January, I had sent to the board, or left with the IDA, a suggestion on a housing policy, how to deal with affordable and workplace housing. So if you all want it, I'm going to sit through the whole meeting and listen to your deliberations, but I'd be happy to share this with you. It works. Mathematically, at least, whether it will work policy-wise is something that you all need to take into consideration. And I think it would be quite unique in terms of what IDAs do anywhere in New York State if you were to adopt something such as what I've laid out here. Thanks.
Thank you, Rick.
Can you do we have a copy of that, Rick? Can we get a copy?
I have multiple copies. I don't know if I have enough for everybody.
Well, as long as we have one for the record, thank
Let's
you.
again pass it around.
This right here, that Rick he didn't introduce it at the time in 2021. It was after, yeah.
It was, I sent it in January of this year. I sent it to you here. And if I recall, I also delivered it in April of 21, so check back on the record. I have some emails regarding that back and forth.
Did you just not have this thought when you were on the board?
No, I had this thought, and we discussed it many, many, many times. We just never came to a conclusion at that point in time, maybe being racked by the controversy around the Kingstonian, felt it better just to leave it be and to revisit it. I can assure you that if I was still here, and I'm not suggesting I want to still be here on the IDA, but if I was still here, it wouldn't be 2 years later that you'd be looking at an idea, an affordable housing policy. I think it's too important.
Thanks, Rick. Lisa, I believe we have Deputy State Comptroller Elliot Orbach. Retired.
Thank you. So I'm neither as eloquent nor as detailed as Mr. Jones is, but I'm equally as passionate about your effort to lift this moratorium. As Mike said, I am the former New York State Deputy Controller. I also served 10 years as the Ulster County Controller, and served as the mayor of the village of Ellenville. So I've seen firsthand the challenges that housing issues have, not only statewide but locally as well. And I am glad that you are considering lifting the moratorium. I may differ a little with Rick's approach when he referred to retail housing or home ownership. I do see a value in that, so I would hope that you would consider folding it in at some time. But just want to encourage you to address this issue now, and let you know that you're joining good company, because throughout New York State there are a number of IDAs who are revisiting or have revisited the housing issue. I believe there's 18 projects right now going on throughout the course of New York State in regard to housing and IDAs. And I think that it would be courageous on your part. I have total trust in this board to review that, look at that, and hopefully lift that moratorium. Thank you.
Thank you, Elliot. Lisa, do we have any other speakers? Any other comment? Anyone else like to speak? Okay. Thank you, guys. Executive session. Anything up for executive session? I don't believe so. Look at that. Bill, you get no break today. Okay?
There was a split in space-time.
Go into the chair's report. So, chair's report, we continue to meet with potential clients and projects. I've been working closely with Hillary, Lisa, and Joe. We're taking phone calls here and there from people. Nothing's come through on applications right now. We're waiting to see what comes out of the new year. But I'd like to say thank you for all the hard work that this board does, all right, every time you're called upon. And, I want to say from my family to yours, have a great and happy holiday season. And that's my report. We'll now hear from the Executive Director, Hillary Nichols.
Thanks, Mike. All right, so mine will hopefully mirror some of what Mike said, but I thought I would just start out by updating the board on the completion of the personnel and office space issues that have been approved at past meetings. This is just an update, and there's no action required by the board. So Lisa Purcell, hiring was completed on 12/11, bringing her from Norman Staffing to IDA's payroll. Yay! So in the execution of that process, we just ensured that we followed all applicable requirements under New York State, workers' comp, disability, paid family leave, and followed our procurement policy throughout that process. In addition, under her approved employment agreement, we're setting up health insurance through CDPHP with a 1/1/24 start date. Again, following procurement with input from council on kind of following that. And BST is going to be assisting us with securing the retirement benefits available to IDA staff as quasi-government agencies, and we'll keep you apprised as we move forward with that step. We are also now officially working from 224 Fair Street, Suite 3. We would invite everyone to stop on by. We've completed the majority of office equipment purchases as previously approved, and secured our liability insurance through Ulster Savings as per our lease agreement and following procurement. So any questions on those? All right, so next, just kind of briefly mirroring what Mike said on projects. This month we heard from several new potential project applicants. Like many of the other applicants, they bring a broad range of ideas to the IDA with an eye on job creation. This included an elder care facility and a few tourism destinations, and we look forward to moving potential applicants through the pre-screen process. On these initial meetings, we really just assist projects to see if the IDA is the right fit for them, or when a formal application to the IDA should be made, and Joe works really wonderfully to kind of explain that process. We also strive to be a resource for economic development in the community and try to support businesses who are coming to the IDA for job retention and creation, to help also make a warm handoff in situations where we may not be the right fit. So we're really working hard to kind of get a sense of the whole economic development landscape here in Ulster County and make sure that we're not just kind of pushing people off whose projects don't line up with, what the IDA can do. Questions on that? Okay. So now just kind of moving into just community outreach and what we've been doing. So we're just really working on continuing to be visible in the community. We want to drive our mission and increase awareness and accessibility to the public. I added an outreach calendar to my calendar, so as suggested by the board, so feel free to send in events, put them on there. We're just excited to be out and about. I love going to things, so don't ever feel like also it's a burden. I want to be there. So does Lisa. So, we want to be out and about. And since our November meeting, just kind of know where we've been. We've attended a multitude of events. We've been at Chamber of Commerce events, including the Mixer at Old Savannah and Kingston. We attended the Ulster Strong annual reception at the Wildflower Farms in Gardner. The Council Industries annual expo and member lunch, that was in Poughkeepsie, but they serve Ulster County as well. And these events are just a great opportunity to meet with members of the community who have a strong interest in the work of IDA and assist in helping give the public a better understanding of our mission and role in the community. In addition, we're also meeting directly with our economic development partners, including Ulster BOCES. I met with the superintendent, Jonah Schenker, and their director of CTE programs, Peter Harris, and I'm going back for a more in-depth tour, I think on the 8th, of like all their equipment and, you know, what specific skills students are trained on. We also met with Town of Ulster Supervisor James Quigley to kind of hear about issues out in the Town of Ulster, as well as been meeting with Kevin Lynch, who's the Director of Economic Development here in Ulster County, and that's been great. He has really given me a lot of information on his skill set, which is strongly rooted in finance, so it's a nice kind of, you know, way for me to get a better, larger picture of financial resources that are available outside of just what the IDA does. All right, where was I? Okay, so I also attended the December meeting of the Ulster County Economic Development Alliance, UCIDA, just as, you know, a member of kind of the public, and this is just to help us get a broader understanding of what's going on and a working knowledge of kind of the other economic development entity here in Ulster County. And we look forward to continuing our outreach in 2024. So far on the calendar, kind of like bigger stuff, Ulster County is having a workforce summit in January, and we'll be in attendance at that event. So we're really looking forward to that. And then moving into Paris, there are no questions. Okay, so we're excited, as excited as you can be, for annual reporting. So you all should have gotten an email, just an attachment. Lisa has it up on the desk. It has just a list of all of the projects, where they're located. If anyone wants to sign up or let us know, we'd love for board members, if possible, to do too. I want to go on a bunch too. I know, you know, everyone's kind of in their own space and has different things going on in their lives. So if you can get out to 2 projects, that would be phenomenal. Just let me know what your schedule is. And if there are any issues, just come to me, because I really want to go see them all anyway, but I don't want to take away from any of the work that you do as board members. So, Joe, just kind of an update. We emailed all of the projects on December 4th with all of the contacts that we had from last year, including attachments and formal letters. Then we sent out in the mail all of the invoices. In both the email and the mail, we asked for them to please, you know, confirm the contact information. And now we're kind of going back through and literally calling and re-emailing everyone who has not responded to date to confirm the contact. We really want to make sure we know who's who on every project before we go into the new year. So we're working through that. We only have a handful at this point that we haven't replied, but we anticipate with several phone calls that they will get back to us. We're hunting them down in their corporate offices. So all of this is due back to the IDA on January 31st, and we plan to send out any reminder emails about 2 weeks before everything is due to the projects. Again, continuing to offer assistance if needed. We also, kind of just a quick update, I know last month we had reported that the comptroller's office had kind of reached out to us with just some small, most of these were typos in our Paris report, our annual report from last year. We worked with Shannon Wagner and Joe to kind of read through that, figure out where we missed a zero. If you haven't been in Paris, in a way it's like an Excel spreadsheet, so if you do one thing wrong, the math is wrong. But we were able to find that. Christian Hodgson from the comptroller's office was great. He's very happy with all of our corrections, and so we've got a good stamp of approval. So we really feel like we're moving into 2024 in a really great space. Things are buttoned up, and we are excited. So questions from anyone, comments, ideas?
I have a comment. So I watch Hillary at these functions that we show up to, the network, and rest assured, on behalf of this board, she kills it.
Oh, thanks.
She kills it.
No doubt.
She is all over the room. I can't keep up with her. She's too energetic.
I feel like I
Okay?
can't keep up with you.
She does a fantastic job on behalf of everything for Ulster County right now, and she is really drawing people in. So she is doing a tremendous job, and her and Lisa as a team over there, it's just phenomenal. So this board is in very good hands.
Yeah, thank you both.
And Joe, I don't want to leave you out of the mix because
Oh,
we
yeah.
always call on you. So
I
know?
call Joe almost every day.
But,
Give him my list. He's great.
But yeah, yeah, your executive director and her team is killing it, so they're doing a great job.
Thanks, Hillary. I do have
Thank
a
you.
question.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I know it's quite a process, takes a lot of time when you have inquiries and moving through to make a determination whether or not the project is something the IDA would consider.
Mhm.
So I'm just curious, are there any projects that you see coming sooner rather than later in the new year for that, potentially there'll be an application in for us to consider?
I think the best way to answer that, because we have a pre-approval process that Joe and Mike have kind of outlined, where we kind of do a pre-screen and then move it in with another board member once an application for kind of to sit down. I would say, just kind of my newness to the role, I don't want to give any of the names of specific businesses just because they haven't put in a formal application and this is a public meeting. But I would think at this point we do have probably 2 or 3 projects that I would think within the first quarter or so of the new year that are strong potential applicants. I think, if someone's approaching me and saying like, hey, this is what we're doing and someone told us to call you, even if they don't kind of have their numbers very firm, or they're not even really sure, or the project sounds a little small, like, I think it's one of you two says, is the juice worth the squeeze? That's
Mike.
We still okay.
That's Mike.
We still want to talk to them
Of
because
course.
it's in that idea phase that things kind of can,
Mhm.
like, where could you go with this, and where are you at today? So we really want to hear from projects, and so right now Mike and I have kind of compiled a list with everyone we've kind of heard from, like, let's say since September, and we're gonna just reach out, check in, where are you at? Do you need any assistance? And then what happens next is once they kind of jot everything down on that application, we sit down and really pick through it before we bring it to you. So we're kind of moving through that. Well, why don't you give us your numbers as the next step, and let's get an application
Right.
together.
Right.
And
So I was just wondering if we were close to any projects at the other end of our pipeline going through that
Diane,
process.
I believe we're all going to be some victims of the interest rates that are out there, and
Yeah.
that slows everybody's roll. And when you get excited, we know from past experience, you get excited about a project, and all of a sudden we never hear from them again.
Yeah.
And and that's the whole thing. And someone already alluded to the fact that hopefully some interest rates come back down here in June. So.
Yeah.
No, thanks. That's helpful. Just trying to get a sense of where we might be with the
I would say that we are not at a public hearing phase for probably till the weather gets a little warmer.
And you had said you had talked to some projects that weren't a good fit for the IDA. Were they handoffs to the county economic development, or where were you handing off, and how was that relationship? Because that's part of
Yeah.
what you're looking to build.
Well, what we're doing is kind of, and Mike is great too, because he knows everybody. So that's a nice. So he'll often give some ideas directly to applicants about places that they can reach out, and then Kevin and I plan in the new year to just meet for a half hour every other week. And so right now we're kind of just giving them resources, Kevin's contacts, things like that. But I think what I would like to see is us, in a way, kind of feed each other projects come the new year, because they have like their revolving loan fund and other programs that they do that we don't do, and then we can bring in kind of help with maybe larger projects. And so
More official handoff.
yeah, and really not just be like, oh, have you talked to economic development? Here's his email, loop him in, but really have more formal conversations with economic development about projects that we feel bring some real great value to the community. People who want to be here, want to invest their money here, but just aren't necessarily going to benefit from IDA, whether they don't need it because of the but-for, or the project's just on a much smaller scale. we're trying to make sure that there's that kind of like resource connection, and it really, I would say, would depend on the project. Some of it may just be connecting them with the right person, and others may be more formal connections with economic development. New York State has the CFA, which is Consolidated Fiscal App, that businesses can apply to. So resources like that, some of these, you know, consulting development firms are very well versed in this, and others are more kind of just maybe younger people who've invested money and are like, well, now what? So
Is
it
there
depends.
any connection between the IDA and the regional development groups?
The Mid-Hudson Regional
right.
Development. So I would say that's a direction I would like to go a little more. I know when Tim was here, he was very involved in more of the regional things. I think Kevin is still kind of getting his footing. But we are very connected with New York State Economic Development Alliance. I've met with their executive director. They're phenomenal. But that's an area I agree that we could.
Regional has
That
some,
Mid-Hudson
yeah,
Regional Economic Development. Yeah, it's kind of really just figuring out who in Ulster County is kind of the pulling that
Point
together. Because I know, like, I used to go to, like, meetings on that, and, like, Tim was always on them, kind of the. So it's really who's that new point person for our county. But yes, that's a great suggestion and scenario we'd like to kind of firm up a little bit, I
Great.
think. Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. Yeah. Any other thoughts, questions? All right. So then, moving into financial. We are so happy today that BST is here. So,
Mark? Yes. You got the floor. Mark, can you introduce yourself to the board? I don't think anybody's met you yet.
So I'm Mark from DST. Just give a little background. So I've been doing accounting since 1996. I worked for 17 years in private industry for Curtis Lumber Company up in Ballston Spa, New York.
Excuse me, Mark, for the
Yeah.
record, can you please give me your last name also?
Opelka, O-P.
Oh, well, hold on a minute. Never mind. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead, Bill. Spell that one.
Opelka. O-P-A-L-K-A.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay. So after 17 years, I decided to move different career path, and I went into public authorities. I worked for Capwise Albany in the city of Albany, who had a professional service agreement to operate the City of Albany Industrial Development Agency and City of Albany Natural Resource Corporation. In 2013, I was appointed the interim CFO. Joe Scott can tell me if I'm giving any of these facts wrong. Interim CFO and interim assistant treasurer due to a vacancy that happened in 2014 as part of the January house cleaning resolutions. I was named the CFO and assistant treasurer of the organization, and I had that title until October 2021. So that's a little bit of the background with me. So I've dealt with Harris for more years than I probably wanted to, but I. All right, point more towards me. So the balance sheet as of yesterday, total assets were about a little over $1 million. Primarily, that $1 million is in the bank accounts, which comprises of unrestricted cash, and we do have some investments in CDs for the agency. There is receivables of $333,000, which there is a long-term receivable for one project, and the remaining is about $4,000 in short-term receivables. That's pretty much it. There's a small due from the CRC. There's a agreement that the CRC will share some expenses with the IDA, so that's out on the balance sheet. That's owed currently from the CRC to the IDA. On the liability side, liabilities are $24,000. Majority of that is what's money's held in escrow, and the accounts payable, which was about $7,000. So with that, that's unrestricted net assets to the organization of $1.1 million, and so the total liabilities is $1 million as well. So Q4, so was no project activity fees was received during the fourth quarter to date. So the only income is $487 that was interest earned on the bank accounts. So expense-wise, expenses for professional service contracts was about $38,000, comprising of salary and wages and legal fees. Those were the two biggest expenses in that category. Now keep in mind the admin staff fees are lower now because we went from an outsourcing model. We brought staff in-house, so that's going to move from that line. That will move into the salary line going forward. So you'll see that line increase going forward. And then other operating expenditures are $62,000. That's pretty much it. I mean, we have a little bit of supplies and postage, and then just other miscellaneous dues subscriptions there. So with that, Q4 to date is minus $63,000. There might be some salaries. I think there might be one more payroll left in the year that will go into that salary number. We'll firm up. There's going to be some expenses that are going to trail from this that will come in through January that will get in before the audit. So we'll actually accrue for those expenses on that line. But year to date, I'll just run through year to date real quick. There was one project closing that was for a consent to mortgage for $2,500. The other part of the $33,000 in project fees, that was your annual fees that the projects have to pay for reporting requirements. And then on top of that, there was $3,000 in late fees collected for those projects that failed to meet their timely reporting requirement. And then obviously interest income of about $3,200 this year. Interest rates have gone up. You've taken advantage of that. You've put them into CDs, so you've done the right prudent thing as the agency. So total revenue is $46,000 against expenses of $193,000. Likewise, the biggest expenses there is admin fees, legal fees, audit fees, your typical professional service fees to run the organization. And then, very minimal expenses other than subscriptions was about $16,000, and then some pass-through entities that you did on compliance. You get the revenue, but you got to pay some of that expenses back to your organization. So with that, net revenue is $147,000 negative for the year. But if you had the two pending projects that are in your board materials, this would look a lot better, and you would be way over budget this year. Capital Resource Corporation, just like the IDA, total assets $450,000. Majority of that is investments in cash and savings.
Yeah, let's wait.
We're gonna.
Oh, we're gonna wait on that? Okay. All right. And that's the report of the IDA. I'm good unless there's any questions.
Do we need a motion to accept the report? Motion made.
I didn't see it in,
We can get you over a copy.
okay,
I got him here. I actually did this last night
okay.
for the meeting today, so I will.
I went to the bank yesterday to get our statement today. So as of yesterday, what our account was.
So yeah, I apologize. I didn't have him. I prepared this after your materials were posted up.
Yeah, please, can we just make sure all the
Yeah.
board members get a copy? Okay.
Thank you.
Who seconded that motion? Second.
Okay, moving ahead, committee reports.
Motion?
Motion.
Second.
Steve, second by Rachel, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving ahead, committee reports, audit, Steve?
There is the Loki Brill report that's on page 11.
Steve, before you get too started, we're gonna call in Kevin, because I know.
Calling Kevin on the phone?
Yeah, remember? Because I know there was questions of how these numbers get compiled, like how does this area have 176 workers? Remember, we're gonna call in.
Okay. Is he gonna be available here? All right. I would have preferred Kevin to be here. Okay.
I'm gonna call. We had asked at the last board meeting, there were some questions on the audit, and I did not have the answer, so it was suggested that Kevin be available to answer the review of the low-key. All right. So, do we want to go through it first and figure out what the questions are, or do you want me to get Kevin on the phone?
Get him on the phone.
All right.
Let's get him on the phone.
Hello?
Hi, is this Kevin?
Yes, it is.
Hi, Kevin. It's Hillary from Ulster County IDA.
Hey, Larry, how are you today?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you.
So I have you on speaker, and we are just in the process of our meeting of reviewing the low-key Brill reports. So I just wanted to have you available in case the board had questions as the reports were reviewed, if that's okay with you. All right.
Not a problem.
All right. Thanks, Kevin.
So Kevin, let's start with Aferia.
Okay.
217 workers, 176 were compliant with no exceptions. Where is the 217 people coming from?
Which report are you looking at right now, if I may ask?
I'm looking at the November 2023 monthly UCIDA report.
Gotcha. So that's the collective total of all the weekly labor reports submitted for the project during the month of November. So that would be all the workers from November 1st through November 30th. That would be the total headcount of workers that were on the project during that month.
Kevin, I know the project and I know the location and the footprint, okay?
Okay.
And at no time, I can't see where 217 people were on that project.
So you have to understand, that's the collective total. So it's the numbers for, each week are added up to get a cumulative total for the month. So that's that 217 figure that you're seeing.
50+ people a week.
Is that 217
So that comes out-
individuals, or is it just 217 people?
On the
that-
That's considered 217 worker days for the month of November. So yeah, some of those numbers are going to be the same individuals that are just reported on the site for each week.
That's what I was trying to drive
Yeah.
at. We're repeating it over and over.
Right.
Okay.
Right. It's like 50-some people
Okay,
a week.
because the way it reads in our report, I mean, you gotta, what we have in front of us, it basically outlines that there was 217 people there, and when we're looking at a November monthly report, we're automatically assuming 217 people were there for the month of November. I am anyway.
That's what I thought too, yeah.
Okay.
And on the next page, it's
So see the
different.
confusing issue that we're having with these reports.
Yeah, because the total here says 10 workers
10 on the
Correct.
next
total.
page,
And when
that's
you go
right.
back over to the next page, Kevin, which is the
217.
month of
Status
November,
report,
then
yeah.
it says, 10.
Total workers 10 and then 2, yeah.
Yeah, and that was during our site visit on that particular day. So that inspection report that you're referring to there, that's when we actually went out to the site, and those are the amount of workers that we checked that were working on the job that given day.
Almost 300
So that
days.
probably should be clarified
Yeah.
in the heading on the report,
Yeah.
that this is site visit occurred, what date, and that what that is?
No, it
I
does
think
say-
it's in
it
the
does say
black
that.
right there.
Really, it's the other one that I
It's the
think is
other report, right.
It's the other one that's
So I
unclear.
guess the que-
Yeah.
the
It sounds like they had 217 workers were reported, a head count of, and there really wasn't. There was only 10 workers
Over
that worked
30
27 days.
Well, that was also only on that particular day that we went to the project. I mean, obviously the workers fluctuate, you know, each given day, each given week, depending on which contractors are on site. So that varies. That's why we collect the weekly labor reports from the project. They send it to us every Monday after the completed work week. That gives a breakdown of all the contractors that were on site and their head count, both local and non-local, for each day of the week. Those numbers are added to that cumulative total, which you're referring to on the November 2023 report that has that 217 number. So that's where that number comes from, and that just gives you the overall percentage of the project during that month. All those numbers for every single week give us that project overall compliance total, as you see, is 72.65%.
Is there a way that you could share with us and add to this report the actual number of individual workers that worked on the project during that month?
Okay, so did you want to see weekly labor reports that are attached to the monthly reporting? Would that help you to kind of give the
No.
breakdown? It's the same numbers that
No.
I'm looking at each week, so you could see each contractor's head count per day.
No, I
For me,
think,
Kevin, I would have to think that the 217 that you're reporting would be like an annual report, okay, at the end, a collective report at the end. What I'm looking for is like, we just went through November, so why wouldn't we have a total, if you were gonna total it like that, why wouldn't it just be for the month of November? Why would you run the report for 217, or, 217 people? It's just
Instances.
confusing
It looks-
to
it looks-
report. I think we just have to get on the same page on how we want to read our reports. It makes it that much
So-
smoother for us.
Kevin, one of the things I think we are struggling with is the way it's defined. Is there a different way of defining what the 217 represents versus the 10 in the back?
I'm sorry, ask the question one more time, please.
So on, I don't know if you have the same pages, but November 2023 monthly UCIDA report, you have a total monthly head count of 217 workers.
Yep.
And those are incidences, if you may. Is that right? Because they're aggregate?
no,
Yeah, that's the
not.
cumulative total of the total
That's a
monthly
number
workers on
of-
those weekly labor reports that are submitted.
And
Number of person days.
right.
It isn't head count.
So it's
And
instances.
head count sounds to me like there'd be individual people.
That's right, and that's not a head
they're
count.
not
And that's,
workers.
they're not,
So
At
it's
the end of the day,
Number of days
217 are not
worked.
workers.
by total
They're
number
sort
of
like
workers.
shifts
Yeah,
or-
Correct.
The
They're-
10 is
they're
just
days worked.
reflecting a single day
So you're
within that
multiplying the
month.
10, the number of workers, by the number of days that those workers work. Is that right?
it's- No,
No.
uh-uh,
I think
So-
it's the word
It
head
is.
count.
yeah.
Kevin,
No, I think you
that's
got it.
confusing because it's that 217 is not.
It's not number of
There's
people.
not 217 different workers on the site. That is correct. There are
Correct.
not 217. So
That's the information we'd like to see. Is that something we can get added to the
Just
report?
a note, notation on
Or
the
no,
bottom.
what is it?
Yeah,
Basically,
What does it
how-
represent?
Yeah.
What does it represent?
Yeah, just put a note on the bottom what it
Yeah.
represents. It's not, I mean, just as he explained it.
Or
verbalized
simply,
it.
Kevin, it might be easier to just say 217 equals something multiplied by something else.
So-
right, it's the number of
Whatever the number
workers
is.
times the number of days worked.
Correct.
So can I ask a question
Absolutely.
about, okay, so the numbers we get squared away, but I guess my overall thing is that we do this for a reason, which is whether or not the projects are living up to their responsibilities and what they guaranteed as part of getting an inducement. And they're below 73% compliance over the years. So I don't know where our threshold is with our agreement and contract with them. What is it?
75.
So the question I have is, when do we talk to them and say you're not in compliance and you haven't been?
they had their framing contractor that came to the project was largely out of area, which affected their numbers. So the main building and frame of the building was done with a lot of out of area people. The majority of the rest of the contractors they're utilizing though are all from within the local area. I mean, we've probably got 4 or 5 months of work left to go on the job, with the majority of those subcontractors being local and within the local area. So the numbers have been trending in a better direction, especially on the reports that I've been seeing from the project and based on my inspections performed on site. So I do expect them to at least get over the 75%. You know, usually when it dips below 70%, we're having a conversation with the general contractor to see how they expect to meet that percentage. So, you know, we've had this conversation with them already with Baxter, and they do expect to exceed the 75, hopefully get past 80% of the job. So it's something that we look at every week when I see the weekly labor reports that they're submitting to us.
Right, because I mean, we give them the 25% wiggle room, understanding that not every contract will be local, so,
Sure.
okay.
Right, but do you want to report what we've done staff-wise?
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, we've
Because we don't want to
sent-
wait till they get to 70% and then start talking to them, right? That's kind of,
Yeah, we've sent a compliance letter. Is that the form? Yeah, we've sent a compliance letter to them. It's been received. Kathy Hobbs is aware, and we did that when I think the overall compliance was around 68.
Right.
And so we have seen it, start to trend up.
Yeah, at least 2 months ago, we sent an attorney letter, strongly worded. They responded the same day.
right,
So
Okay.
they're well aware of the situation.
okay.
And is there any fees or anything that we're gathering because they're out of compliance? Because they're getting a benefit, right? So
Well,
I'm
it's
just
really for the whole-
wondering.
Whole
in
thing.
the
For the whole
future-
project.
It's for the whole
Yeah,
part.
that's a great point Lynn is bringing up, and which is will lead us into the new year when we get sit down with governance to go back through our policies and, to take a hard look at a lot of that, because sometimes, and I'm not saying a fear you, but I'm going to broad brushstroke. In general, when people continue a bad practice, it just continues because there's no repercussions.
I mean,
So,
I don't think we want to be punitive in
no,
our nature.
we
but
never
at the
do,
but
right.
However, at
It's
the
our
same
client,
time,
correct.
there's an accountability here and responsibility of which they're getting a
Right.
benefit from the IDA, and just to keep, that we at least have a mechanism, which we do, you guys done great, just again, to signal to them, this is what you agreed to, and we want you to be in compliance.
Well, and the fact that we're seeing improvement in this
Yeah.
particular case is a positive.
Positive.
But, has there been circumstances where we haven't seen it, and do we do a clawback, or, what are there ramifications built into contracts
I-
around this?
I can tell you firsthand that a couple of years back, and Diane was on the
Yeah.
governance too, and we've sent, along with Joe, we sent 3 letters out, and as a result of that, we end up restructuring 2 pilots, okay? Because once again, we didn't want to be punitive and not going to put we didn't want to do that, but we restructured the pilots with the right information, okay, that we didn't receive the first time. And, a third one, which we're all aware, was they just didn't answer us at all, and we ended up clawing back the whole project.
Okay.
So it's there.
All right, so maybe it's already built in
Mhm.
to the point Diane was making, that we don't want to be so punitive, knowing that there's some struggles from time to time in
Correct.
getting resources locally, right? But
It-
we're saying locally is all the counties surrounding as well, so, but if there's a big push, it's sometimes hard to draw, so, all right, thank you.
All right, Kevin, I think what we need to do is sit down with you here coming into the new year and restructure how we would like to read the reports and see what it makes it easier for us. We understand what you're doing, but we also understand we want to be able to open this up, and, it red flags to everybody in here, because we all know the project and we know the footprint, and it would be actually impossible to fit 217 people on the project, so.
It would be very challenging, yes, I would
Yeah.
agree.
So, and firsthand, you're there, so.
Well, I mean, I'm more than happy to come in there if you want to set up a meeting and sit down and discuss the ways to make it more effective
Great.
For everyone and easier to read. There's no issue at all in doing that. The other thing I'll say too is, with this project, R.L. Baxter is general contractor. They were also the general contractor on the Innis project for the majority of that job. So they have a good, familiarity with the labor policy, have a good working relationship with them. It was really only the one contractor on this project that was bringing in out of area labor. And again, for the most part, everyone else has been just about 100%. So that's kind of leads to my confidence in this project making that goal in 75%. I will say with some other IDAs I work for, whenever the percentage goes below the targeted percentage, in your case 75%, generally the IDA will send a letter, and it sounds like you've already done that, to the applicant, just letting them know their project is below the threshold, and to make sure that they are, communicating effectively with their general contractor to meet that goal and the steps that they're taking to make sure that they meet compliance. So maybe that's something you do want to think about going forward when a project is under that percentage, for which you'll see in our, reports once a month. But, of course, we're always open to discussion. However we can make it easier for the board, we're happy to do so.
Okay, Kevin, thank you very much. Thanks for getting on the line with us.
Sure, and you all have a very happy holidays and a happy new year. And again, let me know when you want to set up a time and I'll be there.
Great, Kevin, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a great day.
Yeah, that one immediately red flag. I was like, what are we reading here? So, okay, we'll get a plan together,
I think
we'll,
it's just clarifying the language.
yeah, that's it.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so, thank you, Steve. Moving ahead to finance, Rachel?
No report.
No report. Governance, Costu.
No report, Chair. As governance committee, we were not able to get a quorum, so we haven't met for this month. But I think Hillary will be able to update you on a couple of things, including IT services RFP and a few other discussions Hillary and I had. And I believe Joe was involved as well for some late fees, et cetera. So if you want to
Sure.
just
Oh, yeah, you want me to do the late fee question, Mike?
What's that? I'm
The
sorry.
late fees? You want to
So,
talk about that? I can start with the IT firm.
let's go to the IT
it's in
firm
order.
and let's get that
Yeah,
one
okay.
put to bed here.
So we had put out for RFP for
Page
IT.
18 on your packet?
Yeah.
18 on
Page-
the packet?
Okay. Yes, thank you. So we had put out for RFP for our technology services. This
18 is the
I
contract.
got
This is
13
the actual,
ref-
if you
Yeah,
wanted to
I'm
look,
sorry.
yeah. So we had put this out for RFP. We had sent it, posted it on our website. I believe we had sent it specifically to 10 local firms, including, I think, 6 off of the MWBE list, people that, have good reputations in the community. And while we did have response from 4 firms, and that included the one that had applied from the last one, we actually ended up only, of those 4 firms that had initially shown interest, we ended up only getting one actual finalized proposal. But I did talk to the guy on the phone. He can meet both our web needs. As you know, our website is part of IDA, not law, but I don't know the right word, requirements, and it is auditable by the ABO, so we need someone who can both help us with our, hardware, software, as well as maintaining our website, which was a little bit of a more difficult match to find than I initially thought. There's a lot of specialization within the IT community. However, this guy, his name is Steve, and he put together a really nice proposal. I feel like it checked all of the boxes of what we're looking for. He also did do a website for Sullivan County's, it was an economic development group, like Sullivan Catskills or something. It wasn't their IDA specifically, but it was within kind of the broader scope of what we do, so he understands a little bit about, kind of who our audience is, what our needs are. And if you kind of flip to the back, it outlines his fee structure, which was to redo our website. We are looking to kind of possibly, when I spoke to him on the phone, move our platform, bless you, from GoDaddy, which we're currently using, which is where we've had some issues, to a better website platform, and he's able to seamlessly do that. So that $5,050 is to kind of move our website, rebuild it, make sure we're in compliance with the move and transition, and then for our monthly maintenance support, like all of our IT, those services is $500 a month. And then if you needed to kind of come on site, if we had a major issue outside of kind of the scope of that monthly fee, that would be $30 an hour is what he charges for that service.
Is he local?
Yes.
He is local, yes.
Which is very nice, because if
Yeah.
you do need him, if Lisa needs him hands-on, it's perfect.
So, and we were, we did target local firms. I did not, we can find nationwide firms, but given our needs, we, specifically reaching out to businesses, we did target local firms. So we'd like for this to start 1/1/24. Unless there's any questions or objections, there's a resolution in your packet in regards to this.
Joe, do you want to brief us on the resolution?
Happy to, Chair, and I think this resolution reflects extensive discussions that Hillary and I have had with respect to this procurement. Hillary's very very sensitive to the procurement policy of the IDA and following the requirements with respect to procurement. And what this resolution does is evidence what steps we've taken at the board level and at the staff level with respect to this particular contract. I'll draw your attention to another county in the Hudson Valley that is currently under investigation with respect to a procurement, and that will just further underscore the sensitivity in general with this issue. So what I would suggest is that we take a minute and go through the resolution, and if you go to page 14 of the resolution, the meat of the resolution is really section 1, where it outlines the steps that we've taken, and section 1 is on page 14 of the resolution, where it underscores the points that Hillary reported to you during her discussion, where there's been a solicitation with a number of firms. We've received 2 responses, 1 response.
We received 4 responses, but only 1 actually ended up following through and giving us a final proposal.
So I think what I think we should do maybe then is ink this in a little bit, and I'll update this so that there were 4 verbal, 4 phone calls, right?
4 verbal. So I spoke with I know we're in a public forum, so I won't list all the firms, but I did speak with 4 firms locally who all indicated an interest. We had a discussion, 2 of which I thought I was going to get a proposal based on the discussion. One said it was outside of his scope of work. He was more of a web guy than an IT guy, and therefore was not going to put in a proposal. But then it was sent to an additional 6 firms that we did not receive. So in terms of a dollar value, I only got $1 value proposal.
Right. So the point that we're making here is that we solicited a wide number of firms, got some responses back verbally, got 1 written response, and based on your review of the written response, you're comfortable making a recommendation to the full board, and that's item 1C. With that, I need to put in the number there, Hillary, with respect to what you think the contract amount will be, or we could just refer to the contract.
I think we can refer to the
Okay, I'll do that. And then with that, I'll open it up for any comments or questions.
Yeah. I just have a question around procedure and process, which is, this should be coming out of governance. A vote should have occurred in governance. Governance didn't have a meeting.
Yes.
So the fact that this is being presented at this juncture without a conversation, we are, if I'm not mistaken, out of compliance of our own rules in the way in which we are putting forth proposals. So I'm just questioning process here. Not the, I get it, because we had a minor discussion. I think in October, about the issue you were challenged with, and you were
Yes.
going back, and then there was a conversation about local people, and maybe it was even an early November meeting, and I think you were at the meeting, I think Diane was not, that we had some challenges around this and you were gonna go do this. This should have been presented to governance before it made the table here, so I'm just asking process, and, because once you start usurping governance's
I agree.
process,
But
then where does that
It
all
was
fit?
presented to governance.
It was not presented. This proposal, absolutely not.
Go ahead.
Well,
It was
so
presented to you, but not to us.
it was on the,
We weren't here, so we have to move forward on things, so. if
It
we
doesn't
can't-
mean you usurp. You have a process here.
I don't think there is any usurping there actually
Yes,
at all,
it is.
because
Yeah,
the
It
information
has
was
to be
presented.
voted on in governance before it comes to this table. Otherwise, why do you have a governance committee?
so just, and I do understand 100% what you're saying, Lynn, and you are correct. This was in the governance packet for the meeting that ended up getting canceled, and,
But so it wasn't voted on.
no, and that I
We had
totally
2 weeks
understand.
where it could have been rescheduled, and it wasn't.
Um,
I agree. I had an emergency
No,
that
no, and I
came
know,
up,
um,
and I'll take responsibility for that, but there was never any attempt to reschedule the meeting.
But wasn't there several other dates offered up to reschedule governance at that time?
No, not at
There was
all.
no other extra dates?
No.
There was only one date?
There
set
was
forth?
dates maybe in the beginning, but when it got
Yeah.
canceled, there was no attempt to try and reschedule. So all I'm saying is.
I was on the email thread. My understanding was there were several different dates that were presented for governance. Everybody-
Initially.
And I understand
Initially.
emergency. Everybody agreed to it, but there were other ones lingering there. So my question is for governance, okay, is that if you can't attend the one meeting because something was up, everybody understands, okay? But there were several different dates that were still in that email thread. Why not the response, hey, this came up, what about the 17th? What about the 8th?
Right, nobody initiated a second review.
No, I mean, listen, we're all professionals, we're at workplace, if a meeting gets canceled, somebody follows back up and says, are these dates still good? There just was no follow-up.
There was no
after that
follow-up.
To say the dates were still good. So that just didn't happen, and that's usually practice that we all have in our
Diane,
work
I
life.
will say one thing, since you mentioned decorum in workplace, usually the person who is not able to make it initiates that.
No.
That's
So
never
there's
been the
usually a
practice
staff
here. That may
person
be
who
your
is
workplace,
responsible
but
for
that's not,
organizing
this is a
meetings.
volunteer.
This is a volunteer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Come
going
on.
to move, I move that we table this resolution until the governance committee actually has had a chance to consider it.
So before you do that, can I just give a slight more background? And I don't want, you can keep the motion,
Yeah.
but, so the conversation when the meeting got canceled, and I am, try to be very respectful of everyone's time, is that we have a responsibility to be in compliance with our website needs per the ABO. And so in conversations with Costume and Joe, we didn't want to push out the ability to enter into a contract. And in our procurement policy, there is language that states we're allowed to move forward with something if it is an issue in order to do business as an IDA. And I don't know the language
I
exactly.
don't disagree
so.
with you, and having been part of it from another perspective,
Yes.
that is absolutely correct, but it is not at the expense of no conversation. And the procurement policy is not the same, it's the procurement policy of the county. It's not the procurement that we've adopted, correct?
That I do.
No, it's the procurement policy of the IDA that we've adopted.
Yeah.
And
Which
with
is
it-
the counties.
No, it's not the counties,
Okay.
it's the IDAs. And with respect,
Okay.
look, I'm certainly not,
I'm
And I-
not
and I don't
trying
think
to
this-
hold it up for purposes of technicality, but the minute that, it's a
Well-
slippery slope. The
well-
minute you
No, I
start
understand.
taking things out of committee
Mm-hmm.
and start approving them without committee members opining on them, then it is a slippery slope. And
Well-
I just want to be
Well-
on record with
The
this.
position that you're in, but an email to the
Yeah.
governance committee with the
Yeah.
attached thing said the meeting couldn't happen, I need to push this forward, can we at least get some input?
So and I apologize. I was
That's
under
okay.
the
I mean, it's
the
not your point.
impression
I just
that
wanted to be clear
um,
about
You're
this.
doing an amazing
that
job.
it was my conversation with Costume where we kind of had
I wanna-
thought that this was a
Yeah.
path we could move forward.
But I
So
wanna be
that
on the record, you're doing an incredible
Thanks.
job, and this this is not to hold things up, it's just, again,
No, I understand the
you
process.
know, just in
um,
terms of you making sure, because you're being very hypersensitive, and I think rightly so, about our procurement process.
Yes.
We need to also be sensitive to the processes as a governance in general of this board and
No, and
the
I,
processes that we go through.
we
to
had really
implement.
hoped for it to come out of governance, and have that at the meeting. And I know, I think one of the things too is being just sensitive to time. We have a timeline of when things need to get posted and this, that, and the other thing, and then the board meetings. So I think, I guess my question is, where would you like, because I'm very, I don't want to overstate, because I'm not losing sleep over it, but we have some very significant IT issues that we're unable to address without a firm.
And I agree, this has been
without
an
a
issue.
governance meeting, how do we bring this, to push it out to January for a February 1st, we're then pushing out.
I never, if you
Yeah.
recall, not once in my conversation did I say we needed to do that. What I am trying to address is the sensitivity around pulling things out of committee
No, I
and
understand.
pushing them through.
Yes,
Now,
100%.
having said that, the reality is the IT issue's been on the table for, a while. And we know we need to get this
Yeah.
done. So I am not opposed, but I am going and being very clear that in this particular case, I don't have a problem if we, from a legal perspective, are able to do this. But again, it's a slippery slope, and I'm just putting it on the
and
record. And I know
procurement is.
timing is everything.
I'm actually going to renew my motion that we table this until the committee has actually had a chance to meet. And I do believe it doesn't have to be pushed out to January, or this would have to come up in January. But if the committee is comfortable, you can actually hold a meeting before January, go over the terms and everything before that. And I think we wouldn't have to delay the vote beyond January, and especially if they are crucial with compliance issues.
Well,
we'd lose a month.
We'd still have to go
the
through it.
board.
Right.
This is,
$5,500.
I get it. This is a sensitive issue.
It is, and I did,
get it.
just so if everyone maybe, I don't know if it makes anyone feel more comfortable, I did take our entire procurement policy and put it on a form with checklists. So before anything gets done, I'm making sure that we're securing the right bids, who were the bids, the date they were gotten, all of the attached documentation, so we can bring it to you in a timely manner. We don't want things to drag out.
And there's no comparison to any other option that we could have.
Yeah,
So
we
this is
only
the
have one
only
option.
bid. We know what the price
Yeah,
is.
we do.
Our council has reviewed it. So I'm not sure what the holdup
And we're
is
here with an opportunity for people
to discuss.
if they want to.
I don't think anybody's being facetious in moving it out of governance. We've been trying to get it into governance. Well, the meeting was canceled, okay? All right, whoever didn't answer anybody to reschedule a meeting, it is what it is. But we've known about this issue for over a year with the IT. We've known what we needed somebody in place. Lisa knows it firsthand, okay?
I think a year.
We need to get it done, so, all right, so this is the question. So when's the next governance meeting? Is it next
We
week?
don't have a date yet. I'm available.
I'm available.
Next week?
I
Why
was
don't we give you 10
available
minutes
after
and you
the
can
Why
have it right now?
cancellation.
Yeah,
why can't we
concur.
meet right now in a break?
Concur.
Discuss this. We can give you the time to read it.
Because it has to be published, the meeting has to be published.
Yeah, that's where we.
There are process and procedures, which is the point I'm making, and that really, not to get in, not
Then I
to be
understand the
overly
procedures,
cumbersome.
But we're
Tails
actually
wagging the
putting
dog.
the community at risk
Excuse
because
me?
we don't have proper compliance currently. If we think about that, I think board should.
compliance because it didn't come out of governance to be even here in front
No, we're not compliant in our website, not from governance standpoint, Diane.
So I do feel that this
Our
issue is
website
actually
has not
taking
been
up a
working
little
for
more
years.
time than we actually need, because it clearly boils down to the fact that the governance committee needs to discuss this. I think right now, the back and forth that we're having could be had in the governance committee, and then we could move on with other issues of the IDA. So my motion to table this until the governance committee has had a chance to meet is on the floor.
Is the governance committee meeting to discuss the governance committee separately? That seems like, it seems we have like two different things going on here. The governance committee sounds like they need to have a conversation about process, and can we also just talk about this if anyone needs to talk about it and move it forward?
I just don't
We
feel
cannot.
that it's within, I just don't feel that it's actually within our policies as a body and that we're usurping in our own process. And I think that we just need a chance
We're
to
all
have the
here.
committee to meet. Yeah, I don't feel comfortable considering something that hasn't come up out of committee. So I
The
will
whole
not
committee's
consider
here.
it.
No one from the committee's
So
here.
hypothetical
So are we having a
situation,
governance committee
what do you
meeting?
think what do you think the review of the overall resolution or hiring
I do have a couple
would be?
questions about that for the resolution.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is an issue that's still on the table, but believe it, we needed not to exceed amount, so it looks like between the rebranding and the 500 per month, we're at like $11,500, and then it's like $30 an hour thereafter.
Yeah.
So could we not to exceed, figure you're gonna need some tech support, so we just need to not exceed, right? So you got 11,500 set per year, and then
Yeah,
put in
I'm just
whatever you
getting
think you're gonna
calculator.
need, $30 an hour for maintenance, and then you get your, I was just trying to, that was one of my questions. And the only other question I had related to this specifically, not about the governance issue and whether we're gonna move forward, is, did you have a chance to look at any of the websites that they've actually,
Yeah,
how they
I
look?
did.
Do you like them?
I do, and he actually has them as, if you go on his website, he has them as like, look at my work, kind of,
Example.
a
You like
page.
them though.
And
Okay.
he did
Alright.
Sullivan
And you know,
Catskills,
Diane,
which was
what
nice.
you're stating, a while back, a while ago, when we first were entertaining some stuff, that was one of the issues we were having, was pretty much narrowing down what the yearly was gonna be, what the monthly was. And Joe will tell you, I became frustrated with it, and I sent it over to him, and I said, can you make heads or tails of this? And he goes, no. He goes,
That was
no.
the
And I go,
first.
okay, I feel better. You know, I didn't know if it was 10,000, 20,000, 30,000. It was all, so that's a good point that you're making. Yeah. And you know what? Once again, we were very fortunate in the search here that, you know, we did get it out to as many people as we can. We took a lot of input from people. We asked people. I was in a
Might have had
deli.
a
I was in a deli and I
conversation,
came
yeah.
across two people that go, yeah, we own an ID here. I go, yeah, well, get over to Hillary. You know, so I do think it's very important. I'll put it right out there. Even when Jay Mahler was here helping us out along with Amber, they recognized it right away, and we were in the hunt ever since then.
So just two things that I hadn't thought of, I'm just gonna add to this, is one, we have a cybersecurity, insurance policy that, you know, we have to have is, and so that policy has expired. They are willing to let us renew it on this monthly basis because I had maybe, you know, overstepped, but I had said that we were entering into a contract with an IT company, which will actually change our rate and likely reduce what we now pay in cybersecurity insurance policies because we will have an IT company assisting us. So that's like a behind the scenes kind of piece to this. And then the other thing is I was thinking to your point about the amount, maybe 3,000, and then if there was a major issue, we could bring it to the board. And that way, you know, we have some wiggle room to do some work if needed, and then
So
come
make
to
it
the board.
15,000 is the max, that gives you,
Yeah.
you know, what you're looking for,
And
and just
then-
a couple wiggles right there.
and then this way.
15,000 would be the max.
If something happens
So is that a
majorly,
motion
we'll
then?
come back to the board.
No, I'm just talking about if we do move forward, so if it goes back to governance for consideration, we have not to exceed amount into the resolution that we're looking at. As part of what we would be approving
So
as
with that- in
governance,
that
right?
blank
We don't want
spot
it to exceed a certain
with the
amount, right,
number.
Joe? Because that's what you need to make this resolution.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm a little rusty on my Roberts Rules of Order, and I'm troubled by the motion to table, which trumps, I believe, this
Okay,
resolution.
sorry.
So I
We
think.
can discuss.
so-
Thank you.
Me bad.
Oh,
So I
sorry.
think,
Sorry.
we need to go to your motion
Thank
first.
you.
Sorry, Joe.
No worries.
Well, I'm operating on the fly here. This is go ahead.
Yes, so again, my motion is to table this until the governance committee has actually had a chance to review this resolution and all of the possible considerations for IT departments. I find it a little troubling that only one came and submitted. I don't know if even in that time someone would or another company would be able to submit, or if there's other considerations that could come up. But I think the discussion itself is where this needs to happen and it needs to occur. And again, the time frame of that is it doesn't have to be long. Yes, it will come up in 1 month, but I do believe that proper process should be observed. So my motion, and I'll say it again, is to table this until the governance committee has had an opportunity to consider it. Do you have a second it? Yeah.
Okay, can I ask a question about the motion first before we?
Question on the motion?
Lisa, how many, we need 10 days, calendar days, public notice?
7.
For the governance meeting? 3. So
Oh,
what would
3,
be this?
that's right.
Well, we have to give county notice to
That's
you.
what so what I'm trying to do is to actually attach a date to this motion so it doesn't, so when would be the earliest we could meet?
To know by Friday, to let the county know, to put it on the public calendar for next week.
I'm around.
I can do next week.
Okay, so can we put that in your motion? That-
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
That we would meet by certain points and not to hold you up anymore.
Now, if, another question on the motion though, but to then get this approved, then it wouldn't get approved till the January meeting?
17th.
So 17th,
No, it
so
doesn't
my
really matter.
Doesn't
As long
matter.
as it's before the January meeting.
Doesn't matter.
Don't
It
matter.
does matter,
Until-
that's the point.
Well,
It
before,
matters,
before
this is the
January.
point. It
No,
just.
you don't have to meet before the end of the year. That's what he's saying.
You just have to meet before the next
Before
meeting.
the next meeting.
We
because
can meet on
we have to
January
still come
15th
here
if
to
you
get.
want.
Right.
Just trying to make sure we weren't, okay.
Okay, we have a second? All in favor? I'm
Wait a
sorry?
minute. Did we have a second yet?
No.
Yeah, I thought Diane seconded.
No.
I thought you seconded on the question on the motion. I'm sorry, Rashida, motion's on the floor, is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
I'm opposed, I think we're delaying this.
I'm opposed.
So it's 1, 2, 3, 4?
Three.
So it's 3 yes, 4 no. Okay. So the motion fails. Okay.
So we're on the record.
Okay. So, moving on to the resolution. A motion to accept entering into a contract with Mid-Hudson Web.
As amended by,
Right, and I just want to make sure I have the detail.
That's what I was gonna get.
Right,
So,
The cap information, it was a little
15,000.
15, okay,
Yeah.
great, thank you.
not to exceed 15,000.
Got it.
Okay, without going back to board approval. So, can I get a motion on the resolution?
so moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
and,
Aye.
Can we do a roll call vote?
We can do a roll call vote. Absolutely. Michael Ham, yes. Lynn Archer?
I'm going to preface my vote on the fact that I appreciate all the extra work Hillary went through and know that we've been trying to get an IT contract, but I am opposed to this resolution because we have not followed proper protocol in ensuring governance had the ability to review, ask questions, and vote it out of committee before it was presented to this board.
Thank you, Lynn. Dr. D?
Vote no, but also for reasons per our previous conversation to the vote.
Thank you. Steve Kelly?
I vote yes.
Rashida Tyler?
No, I actually believe that this would leave us open to liabilities around procurement, so absolutely no.
Rachel Silverman?
I vote yes.
And Costabile?
Yes.
The ayes have it. The resolution is adopted. Okay, moving on. Where are we at?
Do you want me to?
What do you have?
Well, Costa brought up the late fees, but since governance hasn't reviewed
We don't
it,
need to
we
discuss
can
that right
just-
now.
that one is not
Yeah, that,
urgent.
That we'll discuss during
Yeah.
next meeting.
Okay.
you know, I think in your report, you said that you guys have reached out to anyone that was late, so
We're,
we're waiting for a
We're-
response. And then,
yeah, and those other questions can go to a governance meeting.
Oh,
They're
I'm
not
so
at
sorry,
us.
I didn't hear what you said, but I
Oh,
was going
sorry.
to discuss.
So there had been some conversations with myself and Costube as to some kind of just general outstanding, very minor matters, but these are not a matter of like pressing business. So those can come to governance. We had hoped to put them on the last meeting agenda, but we will make sure those go on the next governance meeting agenda as to some just outstanding 2022 items. That's all.
thank you, Hillary. Okay. For governance, is that's
That's
it?
it.
Okay,
Thank you, Chair.
thank you. Any old business? Yes, status of pending projects and enforcement matters. Joe?
No changes on either of the two matters, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. New business. On new business, page 31 is a resolution terminating the moratorium housing policy. Joe, do you want to go through the,
Sure, thank you, Chair. The resolution is in your package, starts at page 31. I think what I'd like to highlight is the housing policy is attached as Exhibit A, and I made a minor technical change to this policy, and it's reflected in, if you go to Section 2E on page 37, you'll see in the third line, if the project applicant provides the agency. This is an issue that has been discussed at the board level several times about whose responsibility it is to actually obtain the consent. The prior language just referred to the agency. Operationally, what we had done is push that to the applicant. The agency hasn't actually done that. We have similar language in our uniform tax exemption policy where in certain instances we need the consent of the local taxing jurisdictions, and again, from an operating standpoint, we've always required the applicant to interface with the local government or school district. Here I added the language to make it clear that it's the project applicant's responsibility, not the IDA's responsibility, to present the matter to the governing board. But other than that, the housing policy attached is exactly the same as your existing, as the policy that was in effect immediately prior to the moratorium. With respect to the balance of the resolution, I have a number of whereas paragraphs which describe the process or what's transpired over the last several months. And then operationally, I make some findings, or I suggest that the IDA make some findings with respect to moving forward. And then Section 2 is the operative provision of the resolution where, we terminate/lift the moratorium so that the housing policy then goes back into effect. You'll see in paragraph 2B, there's a reference if you go to the end of that line with the technical changes requested by members of the agency, that's the technical language that I added to the housing policy, making, quote, clear. But again, operationally, there's no change, even though this housing policy hasn't really been used. There's a parallel provision in the UTEP, and that's what we've always followed over the years. With that, I'll open it up for any comments or questions.
I guess my question is, because I was not at the last meeting, how did this resolution come up? Was it through the governance committee? How was this resolution presented? How did it get to the table today?
Well, there's been a number of meetings, both at the governance level and at the board level, and the board meeting at the last meeting was very extensive with respect to the discussion about various options and various alternatives. And there was a discussion at that point at the board level saying, look, we don't seem to be moving, and I don't want to put words in people's mouths. It didn't appear to be any position or any support by under any of the alternatives that the governance committee looked at with respect to other alternatives of the housing policy. There were a number of different housing policies or housing alternatives presented, and so that's
Right, because
If I may make a point of clarification, the proposal that you had put together, and I think it was just Kashtuba and I at the meeting, Mike was there too. Yes, we had conversation, these were all possible, but we all agreed would require a little more work before any one of them could be decided as a course of action. So I think it's important to clarify that there was no agreement around any of that at the table, other than the work that needed to continue to be done to sort it out.
also, I just wanted to say, oh, so sorry. I just wanted to say, the resolution and the policy attached looks quite a bit different than the discussions we've had over the past year. It's really not inclusive of what we had discussed in terms of having different affordability levels and all these things that we gathered different UTEPs from across the state to look at. So I don't know how the resolution came about, but it doesn't seem like anything I've seen before.
So
And
let me just add
yeah,
one thing
yeah.
to that. That's what I was going to say. The current policy is the existing policy of UCIDA.
But the housing
It's
policy,
not
yeah.
the revised or potentially revised policy.
Okay.
But
With the
that's-
additional amendment that
that's-
Joe just went
that's
over.
That's the point.
Right.
There's been no.
There is no
There's been no support behind any of the particular alternatives that have been presented. If it's the decision of the board that you need more time and the governance committee needs more time to consider this, I'm reacting to requests of staff and chair and the chair. Again, staff and council have done significant work to present a number of different alternatives. And if it's the sense of the board and or the governance committee that they need more time, that's certainly well within your purview. But the point I'm trying to make is that there's been a lot of work with respect to alternatives, and the reason why the policy doesn't reflect any of that is that the policy is not designed to reflect that because it's a lifting of the moratorium. You're going back to where you were.
Right, which is not what we had discussed this whole past year. So we've been meeting and having all of these discussions and bringing in people, and that's not what we've been doing for the past year. So that's why I'm really surprised to see this here. I think that the governance committee had started to formulate a policy. So when we're representing to the public that we're lifting this moratorium, yet they see the same old thing in front of them with just a few words changed, it's concerning. And I think it's very concerning that, this came about. I don't know how it came about, but I wouldn't like to represent this to Ulster County residents. That this is what we've done for the past year. Here you go.
I'm
same
sorry, I
thing,
just need to
few
make
words
sure that,
different.
that we're all on the same page. I've attended a number, and I can't tell you because I haven't prepared that aspect of this, how many governance committee meetings there have been, and
Many,
how
yeah.
much discussion there has been on the housing policy. But I will tell you, I was directed to prepare several policies, but no direction as to what the policies were going to say. So I prepared a number of alternatives, and they were all distributed to the board members with a variety of different options and alternatives. And after a review of that, I was then directed to prepare a resolution lifting the moratorium to put us back to where we were on the original policy. So, but I'm at your, courtesies or at your, direction with respect to what you want to do on a going forward basis.
So,
But
Joe,
I just want to
I'm-
make sure that we're
yeah.
all on the same page
Yeah.
with respect to the history here.
So I am so sorry you're directed to do that, because I don't feel that that was what the board, or at least the working group, the governance committee, all the meetings that we were having was intended to do. And I'm so sorry that someone directed you to ask us to lift the moratorium before we had actually formulated our policy. So I don't think anyone intended to do that.
Nobody
Joe to
asked.
lift the
Right.
moratorium.
Right, so then what are we
Nobody.
doing
Joe
with
doesn't
this?
have a
Joe
vote.
does not have
So-
the authority to
No,
do
no,
that.
but that's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. He created a resolution to lift the moratorium
Joe
upon
was
No, we
directed
were-
by the
somebody's
governance
direction.
chair
That's
to actually have some input on this.
To have a draft
Let's work around
and a
the state.
UTEP and a matrix.
That's how
Right,
they
so
came
this
about.
resolution is not to lift the moratorium, right?
This resolution is to lift the moratorium.
Okay,
Without
so
amending the
then-
policy.
Without amending the
Oh,
policy.
well, why would we do that?
At the
So
last
Because
meeting.
we are at a,
Consider
so we can,
projects.
yes.
We had
Well-
extensive
Hey.
discussion at the
Right,
last
so
meeting.
I was at this meeting
Come on.
as well.
One at a time.
I was at the meeting as well.
Yeah.
And we had a very long discussion about trying to accomplish two things, right? One was be able to consider projects moving forward because that moratorium has stopped us from doing anything for a very long time. The other was helping the governance committee get what it needs to put together a new plan. Both of these things need to happen. If we continue to wait until we know exactly and can codify what we want to consider, it's going to be months, if not years. The idea was, if we lift the moratorium, we can start to engage in the conversation, we can start to consider projects, and we can start to message to the community that we are actually looking to engage with projects that are going to include housing, however we want to do it. But to wait until we've done that, as we've seen, moves nothing forward.
So I have,
And
I
I'm
have a
sorry, I've got to interrupt. I apologize. I would direct the board maybe to take a couple of minutes to look at page 7 of the minutes.
That's right.
And page 8 of the minutes.
Right.
And look at that discussion and draw a conclusion as to what was on the agenda planned for today. All right? I would ask that maybe we take, at the courtesies of the chair, maybe we
Absolutely,
take 5
Joe, I
minutes,
agree.
And we had the sunset, right?
5 minutes to look at that paragraph.
And if we could, it was with the precursor, or with the agreement that we would have a governance meeting to review, talk, and address any concerns prior to it being
governance
presented.
meeting convened.
The meeting didn't occur, so now
Why?
because it wasn't planned, or because somebody had an emergency, and the meeting was never rescheduled prior to this, we're just now putting it before the board.
Actually,
Again,
that's
But
not
there's actually
necessarily
some
true.
sense.
If we go back to the September minutes, and we start looking into the
do we
September,
really want to
October
go
minutes.
back over history, Mike?
No, I'm saying, you have presented it.
I-
If we go back, which we're doing now, we're going back, because people could make the governance meeting. If we go back, we're gonna read in there where governance was gonna come back with this board, to this board in October. Governance was coming back to the board in November. And now governance was coming back to the board in December.
Do we want to go back a year? I'm happy to go back the full
We
year.
can go back as long as we'd like. I'm just clarifying.
Can I just say something?
Okay?
And just in terms of what we're making a decision about, I don't, let me just say this. We pass a moratorium. We don't have any projects until spring. I have not heard anything that we have
Correct.
housing projects chopping at our bit to
Okay.
do business. Let me finish
Go ahead, Diane, I'm
my
sorry.
what I have to say. So here we are. We lift the moratorium. So all of a sudden the floodgates are open and all these housing projects are going to come to us, and we get them in the queue and we screen them, and they go through all the time and effort and resources it takes for them to compile an application for consideration, and it's a long, tedious process, as it should be with us. And then all of a sudden, halfway through, we actually have a housing policy that comes out of the governance committee to present to this full board. What do you do with those projects that are in the queue and they've put all this time and effort and resource and money into, and our housing policy does not reflect what they've submitted to us? And we're going to really just say no because we haven't made a decision today about market rate housing, et cetera. So are we really doing a service to these organizations if we have them halfway through the pipeline and then we come up with a resolution that we're actually going to adopt for housing for Ulster County?
That's a very good point. But also, okay, and I'm going to throw it right out there. This board is a board of optics. Everything we talk about is optics. Optics, optic, optic. Now, there's nothing in the queue right now, all right, for housing. You're correct. Now, how does that look optics-wise when we get into March and we change the policy and all of a sudden something's right on our doorstep? What do we do then? Okay, but here's my point I'm trying to make. And I was part of governance too on the lag on this, okay? Because we couldn't figure it out. It couldn't get, and Diane, you were on our team, you know? And you want to know something? We've digest. We have input from everybody. It's coming in from all sides, whether or not just to induce the percentage that's affordable on a project, okay? Rick and myself have talked about this in the past, you know, a long time ago, okay? Whether or not you turn around and you give certain inducements to the overall project, but once again, you just induce a percentage of the project with affordable or workforce housing. It's been presented. Joe did a tremendous job in providing this, you know, committees, all these committees, with different, you know, avenues to achieve a new policy. And here we are again discussing whether or not we're going to wait another 3, 4, 5 months to open the door. And you want to know something? Listen, I understand your concern, but once again, the optics are sitting out there, whether or not you approve it today, whether you approve it in March, whether it's something available, if something's on the paper. Here's what I can tell you. I know one thing, everything has to go through governance. If governance doesn't meet, we don't have anything to vote on. We don't have anything. And listen, all the board members are all invited to governance. So nobody has to wait for an invitation to governance, okay? Come on down. You've got something substantial you want to put on the table, you show up and put it on the table. I attend the governance meetings. I'll go back when Rick Jones was on the governance committee with myself and Diane. We opened it up to every board meeting and all the board members showed up with input.
If I may, I think where we were was that this is a complex issue. We are not the single solution.
No.
We have a housing crisis. It's not just our county. We have a global supply chain problem that happened, drove costs up, inflation, interest rates have gone up. This is complex. We are not the single solution. And I think there was a recognition that we wanted to bring in a third-party consultant to actually help us take everything that everyone has been talking about this past year and come up with a specific UTEP for housing and a policy and make some agreement about whether we're going to do market rate housing. And as somebody that has sat on the governance committee, I've never been on a committee that has not had more engagement and more conversation, not only during scheduled meetings, but leadership to help us through this process in between meetings. And I have not been available for some meetings, but I'm going to say the lack of transparency within the governance committee has been troubling to me, and I've never experienced on the IDA. And I'm frustrated as everyone else is, and I don't think that we should pass a motion today, and I think governance should get back to the business of governance and doing it as a committee.
I'm going to say this about optics. How does it look that we are presenting and keep presenting resolutions that have not been through the proper committees? The optics don't look good. Yes, we have been preparing this process for a very long time. That is what the public has been seeing. And now we're saying, because we have not, done this, we're going to put up the same old stuff again. That doesn't work. The optics on that looks bad. And as around policy, you're saying, hey, let's put something through the governance committee. If it comes out of governance committee, that's great. If nothing comes out of the governance committee, then we're just going to do. Was this moved out of the governance committee to put the same moratorium back up again? Was this moved out? If it wasn't, then we're out of order once again. And the optics of that look bad.
My thing is, you're not introducing anything new. What you're doing is lifting a moratorium. The resolution is to lift the moratorium.
Just to lift the moratorium.
And
It
that's
does not, it has no.
Nobody's saying that
it has
governance
no-
does not continue to do the work, or this
Right.
entity does not get involved.
So get
And
on
I
the road and
understand
start
Diane's
driving
point.
without a license. Get on the road and start driving without a license.
But Rashida, that's
Without
not
any
about
guidance,
governance at
without
all,
any
actually.
road signs, without any idea on what is going to be expected by this board
Right.
when somebody presents a project.
Right.
It makes the most sense to me.
I agree.
This was put on, and we put a moratorium in this because as we, previous IDA board and the governance board, this was not a good policy that helped us make determination when we had housing projects before. So there's a reason there's a moratorium. It wasn't working for us as an IDA before. And so we're just gonna lift it and then end up back where we are, to my point about getting potential projects in a pipeline, and then we change this policy in a couple of months. To me, I don't support this.
And beside that, and looking at the resolution, it said that we've conducted various hearings regarding the housing in Ulster County. As I recall in our discussions, many discussions, we were going to take this to the public. We were going to have meetings in geographical diverse areas of Ulster County to get feedback. Today, hearing the public comment is the first public comment that we have been able to hear actually as a board around this policy. We have not vetted this with the people that we're supposed to be serving. This isn't right.
So Rashida.
Rashida, we're not voting on the
That's
policy.
right.
We're voting on the moratorium.
They're two
And
different
we're-
things.
So
no,
there's
I
two separate
understand that,
things.
but at the same
Moratorium
thank you.
around what policy? A policy that we
No,
don't all
the
agree
existing
with.
policy, which was already there, you can't make
This is-
waters murky by
This
combining
is
two
murky.
different
This is
topics.
very murky. This,
No,
this
it's
what we're doing
not.
right now is
It's very
exceedingly
clear.
It's
murky.
actually
No,
binary.
it's murky. It's exceedingly murky. And this decision-making process is really not, I don't think, in compliance with what we're supposed to be doing as a board. So
This
I
is
don't
the
know what, I
moratorium. This
don't
is
know.
not the policy.
Whatever is happening right now of putting up the same housing policy that we put a moratorium on is not what we agreed to over this past year.
It's on page number 7 and page number 8. What
The,
was
We
for the
discussed it
past
in the-
year,
we
we have been
discussed it.
meeting to
We discussed
formulate a
it in
housing
great- in
policy.
great-
We did not discuss putting the moratorium, taking the
last board
moratorium off
meeting
the
on
same
page
policy.
we did on page number 7 and
I
8 we
understand.
have minutes.
Well, was that agreed to in the governance committee?
have a sunset
Was it
to-
agreed to in the governance committees? And it wasn't. So
It
we're
was
discussing
not,
something
because
out of
it was-
order.
The board meeting was superseding because it
But
happened
that-
before.
But no, it does not. No. I don't think, it
Rashida, it's
says,
on page
you
number
guys
7 and
agreed to go
8.
back to the governance committee, did you not? Did you
We
not agree
decided
to
on
go?
a sunset.
Listen, here's
No.
what it says. Council Scott addressed the board and noted the reason discussion moving forward in December and not to take action was to give the committee and board time to reflect on the prior to it being accepted in December. We had a governance meeting on the calendar prior to this meeting that had to be canceled. We weren't reached out again to reschedule it for this meeting. So it's right there also in the minutes that council suggested that governance have a chance to meet one more time before coming to this meeting on December 20th. It did not happen.
I have a question. Is this process different than, since I've been on the board, every 3 months or so, when we choose to extend the moratorium, which we just do at a board meeting?
No.
So that's what this process is. So every 3 months or so, at the board
Right.
meeting, this comes up, we discuss it here, we vote here, and every time we have voted, it has been to extend the moratorium.
Because we're
How is
working on
this
something.
any different, other than the fact that it seems now we may be voting the other way?
Because,
It is
because.
exactly that.
It is
Because of
exactly
this,
that.
because there is actually a housing policy that's being formulated. We've been
No,
working
there's
on it
no,
for
there
the.
is not.
That
We-
is not
so
the-
all
that's
of
not
the
the
things,
vote.
so all of the things that we've
That's
been doing
not
over
the
the
vote,
past year, we
Rashida.
don't have anything
That's a
for.
completely
vote is
separate
different.
We
issue.
don't have anything for
It's a
that?
separate
Rashida,
issue.
they're two
I
different
don't
votes.
think so. Yeah, no, I don't think so.
But
Rashida,
now
this is a
I'm-
different
That is-
vote. How
that
can
is-
you not think
your
so?
point is absolutely clear.
I think what you're trying to say is you don't want to pass the thing, go back to the old policy because it would just
We're
not
in the
anywhere.
process of working on a
But
policy
process-wise,
and formulating it.
You
process-wise.
have suggested that this process is wrong, so I'm asking for clarification. Did you have a problem with the process any other time we voted as a board when we were voting the way you wanted it to go?
Yes, I did actually. I did.
recall that.
I don't recall you
I-
ever saying that
I-
you objected to that.
I did. I said that we actually have to start working on the formulating the policy that we were crafting.
You did
And
not
we
have any problem with extending the
So
moratorium.
I'm so
Did
sorry.
you have a problem when the board voted to extend the moratorium, which we have done every 3 months or so since I got on the board?
Right.
Well, personally, yes, I did because
Yes,
we
you
hadn't
did.
actually. Thank you. Yes,
She-
I did.
Several times.
With
Yes.
the process.
Challenged.
Yes.
The
Yes.
So,
Yes.
With the process.
Not
The
the
governance
process.
committee did not go
Then you
through
voted
the
for it.
renewal
Then
of.
did you vote against it? Did you vote against extending the moratorium?
Yes.
The moratorium?
Yes.
Is that so?
Yes,
Yes.
she did.
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
All right, then you're the
Actually,
only one then
actually, I
She did
believe it
several
was,
times,
I
yes.
believe the vote was, and Lisa could recall,
that
but the
you don't
vote
agree
was
with the motion.
not to extend
Not
it
to
3
extend
months,
it.
but to
It's not
extend it
like
2
what we've been
months.
talking about, but
So it wasn't a vote
the fact
against
that
the
we're voting on
moratorium,
it, it should be
okay?
behind it,
Hmm?
because we have been voting
The
on
vote was
this.
versus
It's
2
not the
months.
So just
resolution
for,
that's out of
just for the point.
It's
So,
just
To
that
extend
we
it.
don't agree
So
with
we have
it.
more
Okay.
details
They're
then.
actually not
Exactly.
abiding by any
But
of the rules
this
of
is
the IDA.
correct
It is not
procedural to bring up
The
the
what you
resolution.
mentioned.
so we have in front of us
Yeah.
the resolution terminating the moratorium housing policy. I will entertain a motion to accept.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Roll call vote, please.
Roll call vote. Roll call vote on the resolution terminating the moratorium policy. Michael Ham, yes. Lynn Archer,
No, and for the various reasons we've all been talking about, it lacks clarity and direction for any projects coming our way.
thank you, Lynn. Dr. D,
No,
Stephen Kelly,
Yes.
Rashida Tyler,
No, it actually opens the floodgates without any guidance.
thank you. Rachel Silverman,
yes.
Costa-Wallin.
Yes.
Resolutions approved 4-3 to lift the moratorium.
All right, motion to adjourn.
That is
Okay.
seconded.
Is there any other new business? Is there any other new business? Motion for adjournment.
So, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
How about 5 minutes here before the CRC meeting? December 20th, 2023, UCCRC. Roll call. Michael Ham, here. Lynn Archer,
Here.
Dr. D,
Here.
Stephen Kelly,
Here.
Rashida Tyler,
Here.
Rachel Silverman,
Here.
Costu Bois.
Here.
Yes, sirree. Thank you. In front of you, you'll have the minutes from November 15th, UCCRC meeting. Please review, and I'll take a motion to accept.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Executive session, no executive session needed. No public comment? Thank you. Any public comment? Okay, thank you. Chair's report, let my report reflect the UCIDA report. ED report?
Same. The executive director report also reflect the UCIDA report.
Financials, we have BST here. Mark?
Introduce myself, so same as the UCIDA report. And
You're gonna use the same name too, right?
I'll use the same name.
Oh, turn that mic on, please.
So I was also asked, well, what name would you want me to use for this?
It's okay.
Keep your name. Keep your name.
You have a great name.
Thank you. So for same as the IDA, I was asked to compile Q4 some information on the CRC. Keep in mind there's still about a week and a half left in the quarter, but with that, we'll go over the balance sheet first. Total assets are $450,000. Almost all of it is comprised of the bank accounts of the CRC, with $2,000 of accounts receivable currently outstanding as of yesterday. Liabilities, 11,000. With that is the majority of that is that what we talked about in the IDA meeting. It's due. CRC owes the IDA for shared services, and that's part of that. And there is 3,700 in escrow. Equity, there's unrestricted net assets of 444,000, so that's where we come up with the 450,000 for liabilities and equity. When we get to the profit and loss statement of the CRC, like the IDA, they did not have any project fee revenue in Q4 to date. With that, interest income received to date is $448. Expense-wise, the expenses were $8,500. Most of that is the expenses due to the IDA for shared services. So net income for Q4 to date is minus $8,000. When we look at year to date, there was the annual administrative fees of $2,500. Total operating revenue of $6,000. Like the chair mentioned in the IDA meeting, part of the refinancing or people going for bonds. I'm sure this interest rate environment is not favorable for some of this activity, so that's probably why we're not seeing a lot of fee activity come through in 23. With that, expenses are $11,600, and net income is a minus about $5,700 to date. So, any questions on the financials of the CRC?
No, Mark, you're going to get a copy of that over to Lisa, right? So we can get the board members copies of everything.
I did give Hillary the IDA financials.
Okay.
I printed 9 copies out. I hope that is enough for the board.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Was that it? I'm sorry, I didn't want to cut you short. Okay, thank you, Mark. Committee reports, audit.
No report.
Thank you, Steve. Finance.
No report.
Thank you, Rachel. And governance.
Please let the discussion from UCIDA meeting reflect what's for UCCRC.
Thank you. Is there any old business? Any old business? Is there any new business? Is there any new business?
No.
Motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Everybody have a great holiday.